call to order this special meeting of the Winooski City Council. Please join, we just lost Hal. Shoot, there he is.
Wow.
Welcome. I was just going to say, please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance led by Deputy Mayor Hal Colston.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next item is agenda review. Any concerns about order of agenda this evening? All right. The next item on the agenda is public comment. So public comment is meant for anyone who wants to speak on an item that is not on the agenda. So if you are here to comment on the public hearing on the charter change, this would not be the time to do so. If you have a public comment that's not related to the hearing, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom, or you can press *9 on your phone to let us know you wish to speak. All right, we will move on to council reports. Councilors, I'll open it up to you if you wish to share reports today, or if you want to hold for our next regular meeting on Monday, up to you. So I will start with Jim.
I'll hold my report for our next meeting.
Amy?
I will also hold my report.
Mike?
I have nothing to report.
Hal?
I'll hold my report for the next meeting.
All right. We will then move to city update. Jesse, any city updates to share?
Yes, I actually am not going to hold. I have a few things I'd like to update you on tonight. One, we learned today from the Secretary of State's office that the Winooski ballots have not been mailed out yet. It's not that your ballot is missing, it just has not been sent out yet from the Secretary of State's office. We are monitoring that and hope to have news very soon that those have gone out in the mail. I want to give you a quick update that the city school MOU expires tomorrow with all the changes going on in our shared commitments. Sean and I have extended that, signed a side letter to extend that for 45 days and hope to bring you back an MOU for consideration for next year in November. Following your decision at the last meeting to purchase 10 Cedar Street, just wanted to let everyone know that that is now back on the market. So if anyone is interested in purchasing that as is property, it is listed on our bid page, the bid page of our website. Quick update on 133 Elm Street. The DRB Development Review Board issued their decision this week upholding the zoning administrator's notice of violation. That decision is on the website as well as all other attachments. We have also been in contact with the Department of Environmental Conservation, and they are also exploring options. So we hope to come back to you with more updates within the week on 111 Elm Street. And then finally, much more to come about this very soon and maybe on Monday night, but just a reminder that Halloween in Winooski is happening from October 29th to the 31st. We are looking for volunteers and pumpkin pledgers to adopt pumpkins to carve on their own and deliver to the Rotary. So that is all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This brings us to our regular items. So first we have item A for approval, the special city meeting for the purpose of considering changes to the Winooski City Charter. Jesse, would you like to introduce that?
Sure. So we've had lots of conversations over the past couple of months about the charter changes and putting those questions on the ballot. To meet the requirements of the Winooski City Charter as well as Vermont state statute, within this current time window that we're currently in, you actually need to take proactive action to vote to call for a special city meeting and hold that in conjunction with the general election to be held on November 3rd. The warning for that, as we will notice it, is attached to your agenda, lists the questions that as they will appear on the ballot, and warns the public hearing that will occur the night before Election Day, as well as the Election Day itself. So you need to call for that special city meeting.
Sort of like town meeting day, where we have our meeting the day before the actual day of the vote. Any questions or concerns from council? I would entertain a motion to approve warning that special city meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Hal. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. So this brings us to our public hearing. We've noticed a public hearing for consideration of the changes to the Winooski City Charter. So at this time, it's 6:07 p.m. I would like to open the public hearing. We're going to start by giving an overview of these changes and then open it up to the public for questions and comments. Just to set some background, in 2018, a proposal came through the city council to make a change to our charter that would allow residents who are not yet US citizens vote in local elections. In 2019, we established a charter commission to further explore that concept. Through a series of public meetings, they came forward to us with a recommendation on that, as well as some additional changes to our charter. So these items are already on the November general election ballot for registered Winooski voters to vote on. The city also sent out a mailer to every registered voter with more details on the items, and we are going to go into those details tonight. So I would like to start with Article 1 and invite our Charter Commission Chair, Liz Edsel, to give an overview of the all resident voting change.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Lott. Can everyone hear me? Great. So I am Liz Edsel. I have been the chair of the Charter Commission since last November when we first started meeting. I also want to recognize a few of our other members of the commission. We have 5 voting members, 2 alternates, 2 school liaisons, and have had 2 city council liaisons, many of whom are on this call. So Hussein and Eric, I see are on the call here. Thanks so much for joining. We may also be joined by Prashant Singh. I haven't heard from Jerry Myers. And then Sam Myers and Doug Johnson are our 2 alternate members who were dedicated and joined pretty much every meeting. And we also have our 2 school liaisons here, Alex Yin and Tori Cleland, and Hal and Jim from the city council. So our group had a charge of examining the potential for expanding local voting to include non-US citizens. And I would like to add a little bit more context to the history than the mayor did, just speaking to why this question came up. And I wasn't involved back in 2018, but at that time, the city had just done a strategic planning session talking about equity and inclusion, and the other some other municipalities, including the city of Montpelier, were exploring all resident voting. And so it was not a unique idea. And at that time, there was a vote of the city council on whether to put it on the November 2018 ballot. And with a vote of 3 to 5 favoring tabling the conversation and having more of a process, that is really the backdrop of then the creation of our commission. So to be really thorough in conducting outreach, as well as to seek the input of the folks who would be enfranchised to participate in elections, that was not very present at that time. So we have done a lot of work. We've had 15 formally warned meetings and had a lot of really substantive conversations. I'm going to focus on some of the meat of that that I think is relevant context. So hold on one second, pull up my notes a little bit. Noteworthy discussions include, first of all, the language that we use when talking about this measure. So we talked about all resident voting or non-citizen voting, which it had been called up until that point, and whether to specify legal in the ballot language. So on the first, we discussed the importance of using inclusive language in all of our written materials and in the charter itself and on the ballot language. So we concluded by that defining people by what they are not rather than by what they are did not align with the city's commitment to equity and inclusion. So we intentionally stopped using the term non-citizen in fact sheets, presentations, etc. One member of our commission flagged that that might not be transparent enough to the public just to only say all resident. And so to clarify, the official ballot language uses the phrase all legal residents of the city, including those who are not US citizens, to clarify how this measure is different from the status quo. Another key question we discussed at length was whether to be specific about using the term legal resident of Winooski. We decided to include legal for a couple reasons. First, to alleviate any concerns that some residents had about that people without documentation would vote in Winooski elections and thus be targets for deportation. And then knowing that our voter file must be a public record, and we'll talk about the protection of the voter file in a moment, we wanted to avoid having new voters be the targets of individuals or agencies who are concerned about illegal immigration. So to that earlier question of being inclusive, it could be considered not in line with that, to exclude people who might be living in Winooski without federally sanctioned documents. However, we felt like this initiative should be centered on further engagement and inclusion of our diverse population and not a debate on immigration itself. So we assume that the vast majority of residents who would be motivated to vote in local elections are current with their legal residence documentation, and thus we wouldn't be excluding any potential new voters. So those are a couple kind of insights into things we discussed quite a bit. Another charge that the City Council gave to us was to explore protection of the voter list. So if approved, Article 1, which is the all resident voting charter change, would provide equal protection to Winooski's municipal voter file that the state voter file has. The state checklist is protected from being used for commercial purposes and from being released to federal agencies. And I think the city clerk is on the line and they could probably speak to this more, but we've recommended that the city of Winooski voter checklist be kept as a separate document and be available, of course, it's a public record, but be organized by last name and by, I think, street as the checklist is, but shouldn't include any information about citizenship status. And then another component of Article 1 is some inclusive language updates just throughout the charter. So in that same spirit of this measure, the Commission recommended updating the charter to replace the word citizen with another relevant term, wherever citizenship status is not a requirement for the statement to be true. And these changes are listed in detail in the really wonderful informational mailing that the city sent out. Thank you to everyone who worked on this. But in tracked changes, you can see, or maybe it's on the city website version, but it's really just a handful of places where citizen is replaced with resident or some other relevant term. I think the only other piece that I really want to speak to is the outreach that we conducted, and just emphasizing once again our priority to reach out to those members of the community who would be enfranchised. And we were greatly helped in this effort by in June and July, the multilingual liaisons that work for the school district were made available to do some informational outreach, and they shared the translated fact sheet to folks that they work with through the school, and just got questions and input on that process, or on this idea. And the number one concern was whether or not, if this goes through and they were to register and vote in a local election, would their citizenship application be affected? And I appreciate, I think the mayor did the most outreach to folks in Tacoma Park, Maryland, where their city clerk shared how they handle that, and that they haven't had any issues with citizenship applications. So that's very reassuring. So one final note on process is that this question has been talked about a lot, and we feel like it's time for Winooski voters to weigh in, and that those voting on this question on the November ballot are only those people who are currently eligible to vote, so meaning US citizens. Those are some of the frequent topics we discussed. I'm happy to take other questions or elaborate on anything either the mayor or others would like me to.
Thanks, Liz. I would just quickly ask if members of the council or commission want to add anything on, and then I will go over Article 2. I see, Hal, you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to appreciate Liz for her leadership. You know, this is very trying times through the pandemic. And, you know, we had this all planned out over a year ago. Yeah, this is how it's going to play out. We couldn't do door to door. We couldn't do all the interactive, you know, community engagement that we just normally do. And I think she rose to the occasion to help best figure this out. So I want to thank you, Liz.
Thanks for that, Hal.
Much appreciated.
Do any other council or commissioners want to add to context to Article 1? All right, I will talk through Article 2 then. So this is an amendment to permit voters to adopt future charter amendments that have been approved by the Vermont legislature for other municipalities. So what this means in practice is that currently any change to our charter goes through a citywide vote, as we are doing this November. If the voters of Winooski approve it, it is then sent to the state legislature for consideration, and the legislature has to then approve or deny or sometimes ignore. And through the legislative process, then also, I believe the governor signs off if the legislature approves. What the amendment would do to that process is, if we want to take on an amendment that the legislature already approved elsewhere in Vermont, we could cut that out of the process and just do the direct Winooski resident vote and be able to implement that rule. Like, for example, when Winooski wanted to put in place a local options tax, all of our neighboring towns had already put one in place before us. So if we were to do that after this, if this change were in place, we wouldn't have had to get legislative approval because it had already been approved for other cities and towns in Vermont. The language that we have put in place here was vetted by the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, and potentially maybe taken up by other cities or towns in Vermont. I'm not tracking that at the moment. That's just an overview of Article 2. Would any council or commissioner like to elaborate further on that? Hal?
I totally support this, Mayor, because, living the process, the legislative process, it's not as efficient as we had hoped to be. And this is all about making it more efficient. And it makes total sense. We need to spend more time on other issues instead of rubber stamping. So I totally support this effort.
Thank you. Yes, as someone who experiences this in the legislature.
Hey, Mayor Lott, can I just add, if
Sure.
it wasn't clear, I didn't explain the process from here, but the vote in November on all of these charter changes doesn't take effect until also being approved by the state legislature and signed into law by the governor. So this is not the final step in the process.
That's right. All right, so Jesse, can you please talk us through Article 3?
Sure, thank you very much. Also want to call attention to the fact that we are talking about these in 3 different buckets, and they will be 3 separate votes on the November ballot, so people can vote on them each individually. So Article 3 is the combination of administrative changes the Charter Commission also considered and recommended to the council, and the council approved to be put on the ballot. So there are 5 specific administrative challenges that are on the ballot. The first is to conform the charter language to state law requirements for signing petitions. Our current charter states that to run for election, city council or school trustee, you must have petitions signed, and that the public can only sign the number of petitions for which there is an open seat. So for example, during a mayoral election, you're only allowed to sign 1 petition. State statute has changed to allow folks to sign as many as they want, which obviously the state statute trumps our local charter. So we are just aligning that language to follow state law. 2 is to remove language referring to volunteer firefighters. We know in Winooski, we no longer have volunteer firefighters. Every firefighter who works for us is compensated, is paid for training and their time responding to calls, their time for meetings, etc. So as part of our current employment practices, we no longer have volunteers. 3 is to allow the city manager to give the staff person performing human resources functions the title of Human Resources Director. That is not currently allowed in the charter. And certainly in a organization like ours, we have folks who are doing that work. 4 is to amend the provision 19,717 on tax assessment. In the current charter language, it refers to fair market value, which is not how grand list or taxation is implemented in the state. So it is changing that language to assessed value, not fair market value. And then the last administrative change on the ballot is to modify the oath of office language to eliminate the reference to religious preference. And that's a lot of text. And as Liz said, they are all available for viewing at the city clerk's office. The actual language is all available for viewing at the city clerk's office Monday through Friday from 9 to 3, or is posted on our website as well if people would like to go and look at the specific legal language. Thank you.
Thank you. So before we open it up to public comment, are there anything final that council or commissioners would care to add here?
I was asked just to speak on all resident voting changes, but the Charter Commission did also deliberate on the home rule and administrative changes and recommended those measures to the ballot as well. And we also opted not to advance some administrative changes due to various reasons, but I just want listeners to know that these two other efforts have been vetted as well.
Thank you. Good context. Yeah, the commission did start kind of around one item, but expanded to be involved in all of these potential changes. So with that, I'm going to turn to public comments. Our communications coordinator, will, I believe we have some folks who already signed up, and so he will run through those folks and then move on to anyone who is not pre-signed.
Thanks, Mayor Lott. So 2 of the 3 people who are signed up are here. First, we have Dave Senecal. Dave, go ahead when you're ready. Dave, if you hit the unmute yourself button, you'll be able to speak.
Okay, can you hear me?
Hi, Dave. Yes.
Okay. I've been listening to everybody here, and my concern is 50 years ago, I fought for the people of this city. I became disabled. I fought for their rights to vote. I did not fight for the rights of somebody who's not an American citizen to vote. It pains me greatly to have people come up and say, oh, they're here, so we should allow them to vote, period. That's the end of it. No, it's not the end of it as far as I'm concerned. Maybe the people on the city council ought to walk across the street over to the VFW and take a look at the Winooski people that died, giving them the freedoms that they have today. And you seem so easily willing to turn around and give these rights that we fought for away. I don't like it. I think it's a bad idea. And I'd like your comment on it. What about the people that the VFW, the American Legion, the regular Veterans Association, all these people who fought? And what are we, just trash on your feet now?
Thank you for sharing that, Mr. Senecal. I can appreciate the perspective that you're bringing. However, it's not shared by every single veteran that I have spoken with. I have heard both support and disdain for this measure. I think it's very much there's a lot of maybe values behind how people feel, whether they support this initiative or not. And folks will be able to play that out when they vote on their ballots. I would echo something that Liz said earlier. Whether or not you support this measure, I think it's been under discussion in our city for long enough that it's time to let voters make that decision for themselves.
Oh, I agree. Yes, I totally agree. Let's put it to a vote.
Thank you.
Okay, so next up we have Joy. Joy, whenever you're ready.
Yes, hi. Well, first I'd like to thank Dave Senecal for his service. But I would like to say that I think for any veteran that sacrificed their time, their livelihood, everything basically that is them to fight and give rights to us, I consider that empowering for me to then support the rights of new Americans that are here. And I think it's just maybe there is a consideration of, you know, new Americans are new Americans, and when they arrive here, it does take some time for them to assimilate into our culture. And, you know, as an American who has lived in many other parts of the world, I can definitely appreciate Dave's perspective. But I really think that giving them the right to vote, especially locally, is something that well, in my opinion, veterans would personify, and I think is something that is definitely part of why it's great to be American, actually. So I would just say I fully support it. And I think that including any local citizens who live here legally and are residents in how the city works and the issues that would matter to them directly because they live here can only benefit everybody.
Thank you, Joy. Paul, is the third person here?
The third person is not currently here, but we have Dwayne Sherwood who has his hand up. Dwayne, go ahead.
Yeah, and for
Hi,
those
can
who-
you hear me okay?
Sorry. Yes, yes.
Great. So just a couple of comments. I've been wrestling with this citizen voting, non-citizen voting. And, I think that there's a lot of wisdom in welcoming the newcomers and allowing newcomers to be more fully involved and more integrated, more connected with the city and with our community. I think that's a positive step. A couple of questions. How has an estimate been made about how much it would cost administratively to maintain a separate list and provide separate ballots?
I believe we have done that in the past. I don't know the answer offhand. Jesse, do you know?
So we wouldn't necessarily be providing separate ballots. It would be that there would always be a municipal ballot and a state and federal ballot, or a state ballot or a federal ballot. So the municipal ballot would be the same for all folks voting in municipal elections. The cost estimate I think it will cost a bit more time from the clerk's office to maintain that second list. However, currently we believe we can do that within the existing capacity of the clerk's office. And I will say a big part of our ability to do that is a big thanks to the community for all they have done in the last 6 months to do business with the city online and through other electronic methods during COVID. And because of some of that automation, we do have some capacity freed up.
Okay, great, thank you. So a further comment or a further question. If there's a language issue, is there an expectation that people, so I think part of the voting language that I saw is that people would be able to serve on local boards by appointment, is that correct?
Yeah, the changes would, anyone who is able to vote in Winooski is also able to serve, on city council, for example.
Great. So is there an expectation that if there's a language deficit that translation services would have to be provided, or is the expectation that people would operate sufficiently with the English language?
So admittedly, we haven't addressed that fully. Where we stand now, we are able to, pay to have interpreters at meetings upon request. I think if we get to a position where we've got folks who are interested in serving, that's something we're going to have to address if they need that sort of service. It hasn't come up yet. I wouldn't honestly expect it to right away. It takes a while to be engaged in local government before you get to the point of wanting to do that kind of service. So I think we do have time to work towards being prepared for that.
Okay, I did participate as I guess a citizen commenter on the school board meetings last year. And there were some meetings where there were a lot of translations being done simultaneously. And I worry that information was being lost in translation. And it really did take a great deal of time to go through those meetings. Tori can back me up on that. I remember Tori from that. The other thing is on the second charter change, I worry that sometimes there would be times when it would be like copying someone else's homework, and it'd be easy to take something that was geared for another municipality and say, well, we can live with that and go ahead and put that through. And I'm wondering, what does the state legislature say about losing some of their power, giving up some of their power? Just curious about those things.
I'll just, as what Article 2 would do is still have Winooski voters making those decisions for themselves. And I will let Hal speak to the legislative opinion.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, actually, Dwayne, the legislature would not be giving up its power. It would be executing its power to weigh in on how local elections are run. That's embedded in our state constitution. This is a policy issue, and we make the decision in the best interest of Vermonters for how people can participate in our democracy. So that's essentially the issue. And we will weigh in on that as we have weighed in on the issue that came before us in government operations for Montpelier to do the same. We passed it through the House. It got stuck in the Senate. But this is a policy decision of the legislature for local elections only. And the benefit of this is that we will hear from our diverse community. We're the most diverse community in Northern New England. And we have over 600 people who can't exercise their voice because they can't vote. And the other issue too is this is not a black and white issue. When I hear the word New American, it connotes black and brown people. And that's not the case. There are so many white Americans who are here who are not citizens and who can't exercise their voice. So this is an issue for all of our community. And I think the legislature will weigh in to do what's best for Winooski.
Okay. Well, I guess that's all my questions. I'm just sorry that you can't see my smiling face as you could in a live meeting. And the other thing is, it would be very nice, you make it very easy to find your way to the online meeting. It would be very nice to have the agenda right next to that spot so we can find the agenda. So when the mayor says, does anybody have any comments before we get to the agenda items, we would know. That's my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dwayne. I will just say the remainder of folks on the line who did not sign up in advance for public comment, again, use the raise hand feature or *9 if you are in by phone. Paul, please bring us our next.
Sam Russo, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Hello, and thank you for taking my question. I'm just curious for the commission in regards to the Article 1 proposal. Has there been any comment from the Vermont Secretary of State's office? And is there any potential conflict with state regulations or federal regulations that could happen presumptively? And what issues those were or could be, and if there's any potential fallout that needs to be planned for in regards to that?
Well, it looks like one of our fellow commissioners, Eric Covey, was on and now is no longer on, but we had the benefit of having as a member of our community, but also our charter commission, Eric Covey, who works for the Secretary of State. So has been an excellent resource on that. We also have had the city attorney review all of the recommendations and give guidance on language, and also had the benefit of Representative Colston, who sits on the Government Operations Committee of the legislature. So we've been blessed with much good guidance, and Hal, I would offer to you any things that might have been little details that could have been problematic, but that we've addressed, or anything that might be outstanding.
No, I just want to reiterate that this is a policy decision of the legislature. So if Winooski says, yes, we want to pursue this, then we will take it up and weigh in on it. It's not a constitutional issue. It's purely the legislature's purview to decide how local elections are conducted. So we will hear from you, our citizens, what their voice is around this issue, and we will seriously consider what to do.
And when Hal says we, he's, I think, speaking with his representative, Hal Colston hat, rather than city councilor or Winooski Charter Commission liaison hat. I think one other potential issue that we discussed was how to protect the voter list. And the law is pretty clear that voter lists are public record. And so we did not have an option of making confidential some or all of our voter file. That I don't think would be a Secretary of State issue, but it's something, you know, in terms of what we were asked to discuss and try and figure out, that we concluded, you know, we can't totally protect our list, but we can recommend having the same protections as the state voter file, and having the list be the Winooski voter list that is separate from the state list. I don't know if that's the type of thing, Sam, that you were wondering about, but those are a couple things that come to mind.
Yeah, protection of the voter list is one concern, although I don't see it being particularly an issue, as a lot of the new Americans in Winooski are under the process of becoming, you know, American citizens, but should have the right to vote in city elections, I believe. Because I would like to echo Representative Colston's remarks that this isn't a, you know, this isn't limited to, you know, a particular section of new Americans, you know, in Winooski. These are people who often end up in Vermont, not necessarily voluntarily, but are fleeing, you know, severe situations in other countries, and have had the opportunity to settle here and try to create a family environment. And as part of the city's welcoming, I think including those people's abilities to vote is an important step. Thanks for taking my comment.
Thank you, Sam.
Mayor Lott, can I add just another thought? It's not on the policy details, but rather, you know, it's come up a couple times, who is being left out here, and I would like to ask Hussein to weigh in if he's willing, but also to share a brief story from standing outside the primary polling place to educate folks about this topic, and chatting with Taylor Small, who's running for state rep. And she shared the story about her own mom, who is a Canadian citizen and moved to the United States when she was 3 to get a emergency surgery that wasn't available, and has lived here her whole life, considers herself American, but is horrible at taking tests, and so has never taken a citizenship test, but is a very active person, or would be the type of person interested in being more involved. Taylor's mom is not in Winooski, she's in another Vermont community, but it's just an example. And I know from our outreach and hearing other stories that there are so many different reasons why one might not be a US citizen, but living here, with 10% of our voting age population, hundreds of people, there are hundreds of different stories. You know, I just know from my experience in working on the Charter Commission and engaging with as many Winooski residents as possible, that we are stronger, in my opinion, when we involve more people in our community and in meaningful ways. And that enfranchising someone does not take anything away from people who currently are citizens and vote and are able to vote. Now, this is my personal opinion, but that is something that is crystallized for me throughout the process over the last year of working on this issue. Hussein, did you want to add anything?
Hi everybody. My name is Hussein Amori. I'm currently a senior at Winooski High School. So the question that Liz just brought up was, often a question that we got asked a lot, like, why can they just, become citizen? I just want to, mention that, a lot of the parents that, migrate here tend, to have, I don't know, take a long time to actually, learn English. Okay, my mom, has been here for like, 5 years, just like myself. When we came here, she was like, 35, I believe. And, and if I don't know if my, my research is correct, but like, it takes like almost over 10 years for just like a full adult to be able to learn English, to be able to, pretty much, have a conversation for at least 5 minutes. Okay. Another issue is just like, the financial issue. Like my mom works 2 jobs. Okay. She's constantly just, trying to, make ends meet for me and my little brother here, trying to, to do whatever she can to like, help us out in any way she can. Okay. With, clothes or everything else we need. Okay. She doesn't really have like, most people, she doesn't really have time to actually, I don't know, take classes like of like how to, I don't take, the citizenship test. Like she doesn't really have the time to actually, go to, English school like you used to, because she's, constantly busy trying, to make ends meet and you just, help out, the family as much as they can. Now, when you made the, Congolese community, you pretty much saw, the situation that, most of them were in, like, most of these parents, like, are working, like, long hours. They're trying to help out their family. If there's, any, community member out there who sort of has this question, this is why for most people, it's also, extremely expensive to just, I don't know, apply for the citizenship test. Okay. We're fairly different. We got a lot going on. My mom just, left work, about an hour ago. She works 12 hours, she, overnight shift. Okay. She gets home like around, 7. Okay. She sleeps like for like 9 hours. I get back to school and she, she's still in bed. Okay. After like, 5 minutes, she wakes up. Okay. Gets ready. Does whatever she can to get ready. And, that's, her daily week again. Okay. So with that amount of time, like, do you think she has the time to be able, to go to school and be able to learn English, like, that I, be able to learn English, like, like myself. My brother goes to, to school. It's pretty easy for her, scientifically speaking, it's easier for, young people to be able to learn English and be able to, actually, quickly develop in a new culture. Like, for a lot of parents, it's hard. Okay. And it's hard because, like, I think you all know, like, the financial situation a lot of people are in America. Okay, you constantly have to work to just, pay rent. Okay, and if you don't, you're kicked out. Okay, I don't know how many people got, kicked out over, this pandemic because, jobs, have been lost and all that. But yeah, that's just my take. That's, my personal story that I have. But I guarantee you that, the person, the stories that most people that we're trying to help in this process are telling us. You can, mail out, this, you talk to those Congolese community members, Liz, Taylor, mom's story. One of my teachers at school, she's been here, like, she was born in, in the United States. She's been here, like, for 22 years. Her mom is still a British, citizen. She's not an American citizen, even though she has raised a full adult here in the US. It's quite complicated, and I just hope, that helps people. And thank you.
Thanks for sharing. I will affirm I do not recall the figures offhand, but The application fees for citizenship are upwards of $1,000, and so many members of our community unfortunately cannot acquire that, like don't have that kind of flexible income available to them. So there really is a financial barrier to that process that can cause it to take much longer than it should. I think there's still some folks on the line who haven't made comment. If you wish to, again, use the raise hand feature in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. It's looking like we may not have any additional public comment. Is there any anything else that members of the panel would like to add, commissioners or counselors? Well, I will say thank you, Hussein and Mr. Senegal, for sharing some personal experiences here. We have other members of the commission who aren't here with some personal experience with this, with the process and barriers, and have heard quite a few along the way as we've done outreach. I do want to add one last note. Liz, I don't know if you'll remember offhand the number of contact submissions that you all tracked.
Oh, sure. So we set up a reporting form for contacts since many different commissioners, city councilors, and later the liaisons were conducting outreach. And we had, let's see, this is in the report, to the council that I submitted, but I will have it momentarily. It was over 50 reports back from that outreach.
While you're looking, I'll add that the meetings that Jim and I had through the Winooski School District liaisons with parents, that was north of 50 individuals that we spoke with as well.
Right. Yeah, 50 rows reported exactly. We also did some public presentations. Hal and I did an open air Q&A, and I'd just say personally, I'm willing to speak with any groups, and we're trying to line up a couple more just open air kind of gatherings if folks prefer that in-person experience. But the city has put out some really excellent resources, and I just want to make sure everyone has the best information in order to make informed decisions, and know that all of those of us who have been involved have really worked as hard as we can, as thoughtfully as we can together to make these recommendations, and look forward to seeing how the Winooski voters feel about it.
Thank you, Liz, and everyone. Still seeing no additional comment, I will close this hearing. It is 6:55 p.m. We will move on to item 8A, approval of our next public hearing on the charter change recommendations, which is scheduled for October 13th, again at 6 p.m. Anything to add to that intro, Jesse? All right.
No, that's actually all the same agenda items. So you've already approved the second.
Oh, that's included. Great.
Public hearing, as you noted. Well done.
All right, then we are ready. We are at the end of our agenda and ready to adjourn. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Hal. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. See you next week.
Thanks, Al.
Thank you.